everyone. This is for Creative Writing 207. Hi, faces, yay.
Sorry, I was having technical issues.
You're absolutely fine. It looks like we have 2 students with us. The rest will have access to the recordings. Other people may come in whenever. Here with us today to talk about fiction are Annie Frazier and KB Carle, who you all have read stories from already. So what I'd like to do is I'll let you two each introduce yourselves. If you're joining as one of the students joining, you're welcome to introduce yourselves. And then we can just do a roundtable, whatever questions we may have about fiction writing. You all are working on drafts this week. So this is a good time to ask some questions. And I have some questions from other students who aren't able to join. And then, yeah, just wanted to make this kind of however we need to make it work. It's for you all. So yeah, go ahead.
Introduce ourselves?
Yes, go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Okay, I'm Annie Frazier. I write fiction. I write a lot of, when I say a lot, I mean I write very slow, so I don't have a lot of stories out there, but I write short fiction, and I'm working on a novel that I feel like I've been working on for most of my adult life at this point. So.
And I'm KB Carle. I live and write outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I am the associate editor of Fractured Lit, which is an online literary magazine specializing in flash fiction, as well as an editor for flashback fiction, which specializes in flash fiction under 500 words, and it has to be historical. I am currently working on editing a flash fiction collection, which is a monster in itself. You do not realize how many pieces of flash take up a collection until you actually sit down and write one, and your maximum is 4 pages each. So, and I'm also starting work on my novel, which is exciting. So, yay!
That is exciting.
My name's Rob. Did you say we introduce ourselves too?
Yes, I'll go ahead and let you two introduce yourselves as well.
Hi, my name is Ross O'Neill. I am a sophomore at JCTC. I'm majoring in communications, but I really enjoy writing, and I took this class because I'm working on trying to write an autobiography, and I want to get better at writing. And that's about it.
I'm Kim Ballard. I've taken this writing class because I think, I'm just really interested in it. And honestly, it's my last class that I need to take just to get my associate's degree. And I just thought I might as well take it in something that I enjoy. So.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad everyone's here. I'm keeping an eye on the waiting room in case anyone else joins. I realized I didn't have it pulled up earlier. I'm going to start with a couple of questions from students who weren't able to make it. And then Ross and Kim, if you all have questions, please ask yours. And then Annie and KB, if there's anything you all would like to add as far as like fiction itself or writing in general, please do so. I wanted this to be an opportunity for my students to talk to people who had published fiction who are much more familiar with the genre than I am. So the first question I have from a student is, who or what first inspired you to start writing?
Okay, I'll go. Who or what? I would have to say, well, okay, I'll start with my childhood story of how I didn't know I wanted to be a writer, but I knew I was good at storytelling, aka lying. So really, we have this story in my house where I would watch my father mow the lawn outside. And so I would mimic his behavior, and I didn't know it was bad behavior, but I would cut the carpet while he was mowing the grass to mimic his behavior of mowing the lawn. And yeah. And for years, my mother didn't know what was happening to these big patches of carpet that would just end up missing. And I didn't realize I was lying by saying I had no idea, because I didn't know, like, that it was this thing I wanted to help my dad. So, hey, carpet clearly grows back, right? that was kind of where my creative side kicked in when I was little. And then I don't think I actually started really experimenting with writing until 6th grade, when my 6th grade teacher assigned us to create a poetry book. And we had to write a bunch of poems that would make up this mini collection we made. And I went all out. I wrote about a poem about my favorite stuffed animal, my favorite color, my mom, a potato chip. I think I wrote a poem about a potato chip because we had to write like a sonnet, and I wrote about Doritos because I love Doritos. And I also made a cover for the poetry book. So she was the first one that not only encouraged my creativity to shine in this poetry book, but also taught me that I really am bad at poetry. That's my writing journey.
I
Nice.
really want to read the potato chips on it.
Yeah, I do too.
That got washed out in the basement flood of years ago. So the poetry book no longer is alive and well, but maybe I'll recreate it someday.
I think you should. You should turn it into a flash. I think so. I have writers in my family. So it was always kind of like a thing that people in my family did, and I kind of watched, and I was, as a kid, I was like, oh yeah, I like writing stories. I'm going to be a writer. And then I got high school, college age, and I was like, no, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to be an interior designer. And then I took a writing class because it was there and available. And my family members who are writers saw some of the stuff I wrote and said, if you don't actually give this a try, it's going to make us sad. And I was like, well, that's all the motivation I need. I don't want to be disappointing. So I started, taking it seriously and started getting published. And then I went for my MFA, and now I'm doing a little bit of teaching and that kind of stuff. So it's sort of been a progression from like a thing I used to as a child think, yeah, that's what I'm going to do, until a while that I didn't want to do it, and here I am again.
It's so strange though. Like when I was a child, I don't remember anyone saying, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a writer. Normally,
Yeah,
I remember.
I got laughed at.
Yeah. Poor baby.
Ain't no.
I remember normally when you thought about writers, they were teachers.
Mhm.
And that was their main job, and then writing was on the side. I also remember getting teased a lot because Eric Carle happens to share my last name, but we are in no way related. And everyone just assumed that Eric Carle and I were family, and that I was somehow getting the money off of his children's book. And like, I do love The Very Hungry Caterpillar, but none of this proceeds help benefit me. So that was the closest relation I had to a writer. Was that.
Nice.
And the other question I have from a different student is, what do you do when you feel stuck creatively?
I avoid it, which is what you're not supposed to do. And KP knows this, Carole knows this. Yeah, I go for long periods of time without writing. And then when I get back to it, I'm always really glad that I did, and also really annoyed with myself that I let the sort of stuck feeling last too long. But I mean, the only thing that ever gets me unstuck is to read a lot. So that's really my only advice in that department. I don't know about you, KB.
When I get stuck, it's like a mini meltdown is what I could best describe it as, where I'm in a panic because I'm like, I don't know if this is what I meant to do because nothing's happening. And then you hear people like Stephen King talking about, if you're not writing every day, you're not a writer. And that really gets into your head. I know it's taken me a while to get that notion out of my head that you do not need to write every day in order to be a writer. And there are also different forms that writing can take that don't always involve putting pencil to paper or typing something up that day. So just thinking about writing or thinking about how your characters are going to interact with the world you've created, it counts as writing in my book. But while I had Stephen King's notion that if you're not writing, then you're not writing, or you're not a writer if you're not writing every day, I would just have these moments where I was like, well, I guess I'm not a writer because I haven't written today. But the more I publish and the more I'm putting stuff out there, the more time I'm taking for myself and learning how to relax and finding things that relax me. So watching TV relaxes me, or playing video games, or talking to Annie about how I'm not writing. And both of us having these chats of panic where we're just like, we can't think of anything to write right now. We're going to talk about what we're supposed to be writing, is in my book writing.
Okay, I like that. I like that a lot. The other thing I just thought of is that it's something that I'm starting to finally be willing to do. People talk about, oh, just write really bad drafts. Like even if you know this story isn't going to become something, just write it down just to like keep the muscle working. And I've always been like, no, but it's a bad idea. Why would I write it? And what I'm starting to find is that sometimes stuff that I think is a bad idea, I'm wrong, or it leads me to another idea. So just sort of trying not to, I don't know, that feeling of being stuck is so hard to get past, but trying anything you can to not let it hold is, yeah.
I think that's interesting too, depending on your writing style. What did they call it for NaNoWriMo? The planners and pantskers,
Yeah.
whatever they're called. I'm the one that does not plan. If I plan what I'm going to write, then I consider that the whole idea is on the page already. Why would I need to flesh it out? I can't outline. I talk myself out of writing the story if I even outline it. I think I don't have much room to outline writing stories that are 4 pages long. So I might do it as I work on the novel, but I doubt it, because if I write down the whole outline of how the novel is going to go, that efficiently writes me out of the novel. So I really applaud those that can outline their work and then write based on that. But I'm the kind of person that just, if I have the idea for a chapter or a flash, and I just write it anyway. It doesn't have to be in any kind of order. I figure all that out later. I just go with the flow. Annie, you plan or just go with the flow?
If I plan, then it's a weird day if I've planned a story out. I have one book idea that I kind of have outlined in my head, and it makes me think that there's no, like, something's wrong. That's not going to be any good. Because I mean, yeah, I think a lot of the process of writing is sort of finding out what happens as you are writing, which is a really weird thing to try to explain, but that's sort of how it works for me. Is I sit down with like maybe an idea that's based on an image or based on sort of a feeling I want to evoke, and I just start writing and see what happens. And once the first draft is down, yeah, that's when the real work starts, and you start rearranging and adding and taking away and all of that. But the act of starting something, I don't plan at all.
Yeah, and I think it was a Spalding lecture, and I don't remember who did the lecture, but one of the faculty there had mentioned using outlining in revision.
Mm-hmm.
And that was
Yeah.
like, boom. And I was like,
I was
okay,
at
because
that
I'm the
one.
same way. I don't plan. I don't do a whole lot of fiction anyway. Most of mine is nonfiction, but I will outline when I'm putting stuff together after it's already on the page. If I outline ahead of time, I feel like I'm stuck.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me stuck, actually. I'll start writing, and then I'll say, well, this isn't what the outline said that was supposed to happen. Just give up. But I think outlining for revision is really helpful.
Yeah, I remember that lecture, and I actually started doing that a little bit, especially with longer stuff. I was like, oh, maybe I should just outline this novel I've been writing for 10 years or whatever.
Do you remember who gave it?
No, I don't. Was it Rachel Harper?
Maybe.
Maybe, but she outlines to begin with, so it probably wasn't her. I don't know, but it was amazing, and I don't remember much about it other than it made me start thinking about doing that, and it's really helpful, especially for a longer thing that you're trying to just like keep it all together, and you're like, oh, this is a lot to think about. Just having that sort of outline to reflect back on is helpful.
Kim or Ross, what kind of questions or things do you all have for them?
I was just kind of wondering, like, okay, so say you have one day and you have the time, and you don't have your outline or anything, but you're just doing it and you're kind of stuck. And I'm just wondering what that looks like. If you're just like determined that this is the day, nobody's going to bother you. You have one day. So just kind of curious.
Mm.
Do you have an immediate answer, KB?
I'm like, I've never had a day where someone has not bothered.
Okay, maybe an hour. How about an hour?
There we go.
You have
I
to
was like,
finish.
there's always a phone call. There's always an email. There's
Yeah.
always a person.
Right,
There's
right.
always a problem with the house.
Hypothetically,
Yeah.
if you have 1 hour.
If I have an hour where no one bothers me,
Yeah,
I get
we'll just
stuck.
make it easy. An hour.
I try, if I get stuck within an hour, then I will either walk away because the story is not ready to be written if I can't think of it at the moment, or I'll just do a character sketch where I write the name of the character and I'll write something about them. And this is what I find helpful while I'm starting on this novel, is that I've written a list of all these characters who I plan to be in this novel. And I basically write their role in there. It's really helped because I found out as I was working on it that I was stuck because I had one character who I had the whole story for. She has a life, she has personality, she has everything. And then I have another character that's supposed to mirror her. And that was it. It was just my first character, but just with a different name, which is at all. And so in order to actually start writing her section, I had to go back and actually give her a personality. So instead of worrying about the story, worrying about her dialogue, worrying about even what she was wearing or anything, I just wrote down her name, wrote down what her life looks like at the beginning of the novel, and I started inserting different pieces on how further in the novel that would change. So I gave her a friend because I can't do anything if she's by herself. In the beginning, it would be very difficult if she doesn't have any family, if she doesn't have any friends. So I gave her a friend. And then I figured the friend could cause conflict somehow. And then that became, this person is a writer and her best friend is an artist, and the artist doesn't know what medium of art she wants to work in, which causes this cacophony of mess in their apartment, which could be a problem between the two. And also the best friend can come back later and all this stuff, the backstory. But basically that's what happens when I get stuck, is that I just look at it a different way. Either you take a break or you look at it a different way and try to do things that will help you the following day or in the next hour when you have a break.
That's awesome. I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to add. I mean, some of the stuff that I do, like if I'm working on my novel, and I'm not feeling revising some scene that I wrote 5 years ago. I want to add something new. Sometimes what I'll do is give a character sort of like a scenario. I'll start off with a scenario of something that happened to me, but because she's not me, she handles it completely differently. And it's always a kind of good springboard for me to just see what these other people do with something that's familiar to me, and it becomes unfamiliar and it becomes fiction that way. And that's definitely a way that, like, if I'm working on a longer project that I just am feeling a little stuck with, I will try that, and it usually takes me somewhere totally unexpected. So, or I just stop and check Twitter.
Social media. I find also what's helpful is that I'm a person that doesn't like to, Danny will tell you, I don't like to sit still on a project. So if I'm also stuck, I'll also go through the material I already have. So when you start building up your projects, you'll have a bunch of either chapters or short stories or flash fiction pieces. And I send out the flash fiction pieces that I'm stuck on to readers that I trust and wait for their notes. And then based on their notes, I'll do the edits that they suggest. And that's how I become unstuck as well.
Yeah. That's definitely, yeah. That's a good one.
So I just want to say thank you guys so much for talking to us, and it's great to hear your input. So thank you for being with our class and talking to it. But my question is, I personally have a hard time thinking of creative writing, like stories. Normally when I write, I normally write research. I'm one of those people, I write about what I know, or
I think you froze, Ross.
Did we lose him?
Yeah, we'll give it the computer time to catch up. Yeah, maybe he'll be able to rejoin.
Oh, Zoom.
This is why I use Zoom instead of Collaborate, because that have Collaborate through Blackboard that takes so much more
is it
bandwidth.
really bad? Oh.
Yeah,
Ugh.
it's my nemesis. While we're waiting for him, Kim, do you have any other questions or anything you're wondering about? Oh, good, he's coming back.
okay, I'm back.
Yay! Welcome back. Technology.
My internet went down for a second. But I have a hard time creating monologues between characters because even when I'm telling my own stories, I feel like I have a hard time remembering it, and I'm always afraid of, like, does this really sound like how someone would speak? And like, how do you overcome that challenge?
That's a really good one. I always like to sort of emphasize. I think what comes naturally at first when you're starting out is to try to write these sort of grammatical sentences with, correct punctuation and all of that. But when you read it as speech, it doesn't feel natural. So always kind of keeping in mind that people don't speak in perfect sentences, I think can help, especially if you've got a longer piece of dialogue where someone's talking for, several sentences or something. I mean, that's my main suggestion, is just trying to sort of hear the way people talk and try to translate that to the page, but it takes a lot of practice for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I still struggle with dialogue. It's the thing I will not touch. I do not have to. Dialogue is very tricky for me in that when I first started, I would also write as people talked. And one of my teachers told me that writers have to really be careful because we have our own dialects that we use, whether we're in the house or in a business setting versus a teaching setting versus when we're talking to friends versus when we're talking to our parents versus when we're talking to our grandparents. Our speech changes depending who we're talking to, and that should also reflect when you're writing about when your characters are speaking, who are they talking to and what's the situation. And also the way I've really worked with dialogue is that I've shortened it. I don't try to write long monologues unless the piece I'm writing is just one long monologue. But to help practice with dialogue, I make it short and sweet. I make sure everyone knows who's talking. And that's really helped me through and build up to be comfortable with how much dialogue I'm using in the story. So I would suggest start with very short sentences between your characters. You can, my favorite type of dialogue is the interruption, where you have a character speaking and then you have the wonderful just line where the sentence just drops off and the next character interrupts them. So the thought is never finished, but readers can guess what the thought was. And then that also adds a level of conflict in the story of why your other character didn't let the other character finish their sentence.
Thank you guys so much.
What else? What other questions do we have? And you all can ask about writing in general. I know we read a couple piece by each of these, one by NA and one by KB. So if you have a question about those pieces, or
I thought I absolutely loved both of your work, by the way. I really felt like Annie and yours, I felt like, wow, she's been to a boarding school. She grew up in a boarding school. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm just kind of curious about that. If you did or have some firsthand knowledge of that, because I just thought, and I mean, I haven't, but I felt like I knew what it was like. It was really
well, for a couple
love the
years.
description.
Oh, thank you.
And the
for a
voice
couple
was
years.
awesome.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, a couple years I went to a school that was part day school, part boarding school, and I was not in the boarding school, but some of my friends were, and they talked about it, and I was always like, oh, I'm an only child. Everything was calm and quiet at home, and they would talk about living in the dorms, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's wild. It's madness. So I kind of borrowed from them, but also some personal experiences. The lounge with all the boys around the on the walls, we definitely did that. So
Yeah, I mean, I could see it. It was very, and I thought I loved the end, how, you know, these young girls, they thought they were so cool, and then they realized, like, they're like, what have we done? They have no idea. Very innocent, and I don't know. I really enjoyed it.
thank you.
And KB, I loved yours too. It was very descriptive, and also felt like, you know, I was there, or, you know, that you knew what you were, you know, you've obviously done the research. I'm not going to ask if you were there, because it was a long time ago. In your piece 10 is the one that we read, and or Tyne, I'm not sure how.
Tyne.
Okay. And but anyway, it was really good, and I don't know, I felt, you know, that what a struggle. I mean, like, what a struggle. And I just kept thinking maybe how hard that was for the parents, and just, but I kind of ended up feeling like that, you know, if the baby would be better off probably, you know, not making it through that, because of what it was gonna have to, you know, go through probably at the hands of the, you know, the master. But anyway, it was very, you all did a great job. I really enjoyed it. Both of them.
One question real quick. When you're stuck on writing it for a piece, do you ever take like your real life experiences and mold them into a fictional piece?
Yep. All the time. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the story y'all read was definitely one where I had a line in my mind, and I didn't know how to make a story out of it, and I put the line in an all-girls high school, and then a story.
What was the particular line?
Like coyotes, we make our bodies, or our voices bigger than our bodies.
That was great.
I lived on a farm in Florida, and we had a lot of coyotes. So
yeah, that was great. I just reread both of them before this, so it's still fresh in my mind, and I enjoyed that line as well. That was, yeah, great.
But yeah, when writing fiction, I'd say a lot of my stories come out in it. Not a whole lot, because it still has to be fiction, or else I would write nonfiction. But with Tyne in particular, that's basically my history. I can't look it up like a lot of people can, but as an African American, I do have family members that were once slaves. And in my research, I mean, there are slaves who preferred that their kids not be born into slavery. And so they made the sacrifices to ensure that their children were not slaves. And then there are those who decided to keep their children, as Tyne does, and the master knows that this is another child for me, basically, and another helping hand, and that is my history. That is where I come from. And so in that way, I weaved my personal history with the fiction that I've written. But in my other stories, let's see. Annie. What have I published recently, Annie?
Oh my God, like 50 stories. I swear I cannot keep up.
I was gonna say hello, my name is Miley, but I am not an alcoholic.
No. Not that one.
That one is in the form of a Mad Lib and a word search. And it's about this girl who was going through her life in an AA meeting, documenting how she got there. And I feel like that one's just based on the confessions we make in life, where we have to confront something we're uncomfortable with, which I have experience with. We all have experience with facing our fears and admitting things that we've done wrong and making mistakes. So there's also the broader aspect of emotion that you can weave into your fiction. I'm not an alcoholic, but I know what it's like to confess that I'm wrong in front of a group of people and bare my most vulnerable self to them.
There's also, Ross, a type of story you might want to look up. It's like what if writing. And the one fiction piece I've ever published was based on a what if story, where it's basically like you have a scenario and you say, well, what if I had done that differently? And then you fictionalize the other side of it, or other choices you could have made. And that really can springboard into some really interesting things. With mine, it was I'd gone to a Comic-Con and did like a coming out photo op with an actress I really admire, with a bisexual pride flag, and made it my Facebook profile picture. And a coworker started a rumor that I was having an affair on my husband with this actress.
I forgot about that.
So at first I was like, well, thank you, but no, I would never cheat on him, but I'm flattered. But like, just a really interesting story about how if I had made that, like, what would it have been out of desperation, out of not knowing who I was, all of these things. And then some what ifs are much less dramatic, but if you're thinking about that kind of thing, that might be helpful.
That's such a good suggestion. I was just looking at some of those too, for my class and thinking about how to talk about those. They're really great.
I don't know if I have any more questions, but I am very glad to have gotten everyone's input. So thank you.
I have a question particularly for KB, because I know a lot of your writing is historical. And this came up a couple of times in like a couple of questions in like some assignments. How much research do you do typically before you get into your more historical fiction?
Ooh, I made the mistake of doing a lot of research when I was working on my thesis for Spalding, actually. I got bogged down by the research in that I got all these books and I read all these books about, I was writing in an era of 1945 and slightly earlier. And so I was researching African-American lives during the 40s, the Japanese internment camps, World War II. And I just got so bogged down by the research that I didn't actually write the fiction part of it. My characters got lost within all the research. And so for Tyne and my Tyne stories, I did a basic, like not a basic, but an overview of the time period. I knew from my own personal research years before about slavery and things that slaves had to endure, but I wanted to really ground it in something to make sure my characters didn't get lost. So I chose magical realism. So the research wouldn't take that away from me, in that Tyne will always be able to talk to bugs and insects, just like his daughter will be able to talk to bugs and insects. Now I will have to research insects to pick out particular things about maybe their personalities or the way they interact with one another, but that will never interfere or combat with the historical research part of the novel, so my characters won't get lost in that part.
Smart.
I have a historical novel that I thought was going to be my first novel, and I spent, I think, 2 years researching it, and then I put it on the back burner because I was doing the same thing where it was just like, this is really fun. I'm taking a lot of notes, but I'm not doing anything. So that'll come later. But it's really easy to get bogged down in it.
Is that the Anne Boleyn novel?
No. Ugh, there's like 700 of those. I'm not writing that.
Excuse you, I'm excited for the Anne Boleyn novel.
No. If I ever write anything about Anne Boleyn other than that one poem, it'll be a short story. No, this is my medieval plague novel.
Oh, right.
Oh, you need to
Someday.
hurry up and do that. This is a great time for a plague novel.
I know. I really thought I would start back on it, but gosh, I just didn't. So, yeah.
Would you like us to talk a little bit about submissions, Carol Ann?
Sure. If you would love to talk about submissions, that would be fantastic.
I mean, we are pretty good at it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, like I still have the packet that you all gave out at the one lecture about submitting to LitMags, and then I just never submitted anything.
Aw.
Carol Ann,
Sorry.
okay. I don't know if you know, your teacher has a pretty brilliant collection that she is just hoarding all to herself. I've read the draft of it and I love it, and she refuses to share it with the world. I don't understand, but I'm gonna call her out here. So when she does submit it and it gets accepted somewhere, I get all the credit. So
I'll release this video as a public video just so I can say that this is your I told you so.
This is my public service
This is
announcement.
your blurb. I love it.
But once you really start writing and you have pieces that you feel are ready, you might want to submit them for publication. And there are a lot of places that, Ross, it sounds like you're working more on more memoir pieces or essays, or maybe you want to write fiction like we do. And I know a lot of places also accept hybrids. So I wrote one piece where part of it's nonfiction and the other part is fiction, where it takes place I have a reoccurring dream where I'm in an elevator to nowhere. I heard elevator dreams are kind of common, but it's an elevator to nowhere, and by the end of the dream, the elevator shatters and I fall. So I combine that with my nonfiction piece about me swimming and how swimming really affected me and how I saw myself. And so hybrid pieces like that are also loved by literary magazines. So you'll find a lot of literary magazines out there that look for different things. There are some that look for different themes. I know Annie reads for Longleaf, and their open submission period is coming up February 15th.
Right.
And they're specializing in dreams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if you have a short piece about dreams, you could submit it there for their special call.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I think well, for a lot of my students, when I start talking about literary magazines, they're like, oh, the New Yorker and, a couple other of the old print ones. And I'm like, get on the internet really quick and just go look at how many literary magazines are out there that are publishing either in print or online or both. And I feel like there's sort of like a niche for everyone out there, and there's so much interesting writing going on in these literary magazines. So once you get kind of feeling like you want to put your work out in the world, there's definitely a place for it out there. It's pretty cool right now, literary mag wise.
Mm-hmm. You'll also find things that you like about literary magazines, like you may want a shorter response time. I know I have a very difficult time waiting months for a response, whether it's been accepted or rejected. I tend not to submit to literary magazines that don't allow simultaneous submissions. So literary magazines that only want you to submit one piece or two pieces at a time to them, and then you can't submit that piece anywhere else. But I also like literary magazines that mostly publish online, because I like my work to be easily accessed by the masses, instead of people like my family having to purchase the literary magazine, unless it's like a big quarterly review or something like that. Then heck yeah, I'm going to submit. I much prefer pieces that are published online because it also helps with the teaching factor. If someone, the highest compliment someone can give you is teaching your work in their class, and you want that to be easily accessible, like ours, where you could just go online and look them up, and you can just bring them on your computer. You can read them like Kim did before this meeting, this chat, and instead of just buying the book and having to wait for it to arrive in your mailbox, especially, I know here it's snowing and we're getting ice storms, so the mail is delayed, so you never know when it would arrive.
Agree.
That is some great
Basically.
points.
Mhm.
How do you find literary magazines when you're, like, say you have a piece and you're ready to submit it? How do you decide where to submit it?
How do we get started on that topic? I mean, it's not super helpful to just Google literary magazines because there are so many out there.
And you'll probably get the most prestigious ones
Yeah.
first, like the New Yorker.
He'll be like, okay, we'll never hear from you. Like they don't respond unless they print it.
I know.
So
Or you have an agent that sent
Yeah.
it there for you.
Yeah. So I'm trying to, what is, because Duotrip you have to pay for. I'm rusty on Submittable. You can find calls for submissions on.
New Pages is usually pretty good
There
too.
you go. Thank you. I couldn't, the word was just
Like,
I'm gonna come up with it if I talk long enough. Yeah, New Pages is really helpful. That's the one that they do like sort of a big description of the literary magazine and what they like and all of their guidelines. That one's really, really helpful. Just to sort of get an idea of what they even are, what people are looking for, you know, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that would be, where is my, it's gonna take too long to find it, but yeah, start with New Pages, and oops, sorry. That's a really good one. Do you have any other thoughts, KB, about?
Mine was basically word of mouth. So we were fortunate enough to have teachers who gave us a list of places to consider submitting. And then also the literary Twitter community is also very helpful. Most of the time you can just post a status on Twitter and say, hey, I have this piece and it's about 1,000 to 1,500 words long. Are there any places open for submissions right now, or call for submissions for CNF pieces? I have a memoir that's, gosh, I don't even know how long short stories are anymore.
I don't, yeah.
Like 7,000 words long. 50,000, is that? No, they're 15 pages, not 50,000. I don't know. 15 pages long. And is anyone looking for, is anyone have a call for that type of thing?
Yeah, you usually get some responses to that can be really helpful. I've gotten lazy lately. If I have something really specific that I'm trying to submit, I will just tweet, and all of the literary magazine people are like, oh, so-and-so's open. Oh, you should send that here. You should do this. It's really like a little too easy.
I finished a creative nonfiction piece recently. Annie was there for that storm. I did not expect a whole Twitter storm to revolve from that piece, but I had a whole bunch of literary magazines pop up and be like, hey, we're open. We'd love to read your work. And then I had fellow writers of mine tag literary magazines and be like, oh, like JMWW Journal is open. And Smoke Long, I could never get a creative nonfiction piece into Smoke Long. They're like one of the top nonfiction places out there. They rejected me every single time. But it was nice of them to think that I could have a possibility of getting creative nonfiction into Smoke Long. But it's just things like that. So the community will really like help you in finding a place to submit your pieces. They'll tag the journals, and then the journals will see your original tweet, and sometimes they'll respond and be like, yeah, we'd love to read piece. And when you get really good at social media and connecting with other writers and literary journals, sometimes those editors will pop up in your inbox and be like, look, you don't need to go through our submission manager. You can just send it directly to my email,
I
and they'll
can't
give you a
believe
faster
you.
response that way.
That is very cool.
That's the dream, right?
Yeah. It's only happened to me a couple times. I'm like, oh, it's good.
Then there's a lot of pressure with that, though, because
Mhm.
my paranoia is, what if they solicit me and then I submit them pieces and then they still
And they're
reject
like,
them?
oh, no,
Do
not
I
that,
try
though."
again?
That happened to me once. Somebody solicited me and I submitted stuff and they were like, do you have anything else?
I know that happened to
And
me
then I sent
too.
it and it got accepted. So
Oh, that was not the end of my story. I was just like, no, I really don't have anything. I'm tired. I'm overworked. I will email you again in the future. I still haven't done it. I really do
that's on the back
email them
burner.
back.
I mean, I think the overall thing though is that even if you're brand new to writing, to submitting writing to literary magazines, it's kind of a nice community. Everybody's on Twitter pretty much. It's really friendly for the most part. I think one of my favorite things is that when a writer tweets out, I just got my first acceptance ever, suddenly you see that there's like 500 likes on that tweet, and it's all from writers who've been doing it for a while, and they're genuinely excited anytime they see somebody new kind of jumping into the community. So that's what I always try to take away from that, and the idea of submitting, which is admittedly scary, but it can be really fun. So.
There's also in forming a community, you can also, especially now, a lot of teachers are teaching virtually, and there are a lot of online workshops. I know more about flash fiction workshops than I do about any offerings in short stories. Or I haven't seen, maybe Carol Ann has seen some, but I haven't seen a lot of nonfiction courses. Maybe Pen America or Catapult is offering some.
Probably.
But if you have the money, I would suggest signing up for a workshop to further develop your writing, because there are different kinds of workshops.
Mhm.
You can have the intense 2-week workshop where you write a new piece every day. And this is for flash fiction. So it's not like you're writing chapters or short stories every single day. You're writing up to 4 pages every day. And the model is you get positive feedback, or you get split into groups, and you and your group members will focus on those stories, and you'll do some positive notes and then things for the author to consider in editing. It just depends what you're looking to get out of the workshop. The ones where you normally critique each other's work, those tend to last for 6 weeks, and then new prompts are posted like Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So they tend to go a little bit slower versus the intense workshop.
There are a lot of like little one day workshops for sort of specific writing craft topics that have been popping up too. I feel like
Louisville Literary Arts has had some really good
Okay.
ones.
Cool.
And they have a Facebook group, and I maybe they're on Twitter. I don't know if I follow them on Twitter. I usually follow them on Facebook, but they're done by some local, or at least Kentucky-based writers. But they've had the good thing, if there is a good thing about COVID, is that they've been able to offer some like a wider range of different workshops, and they're usually pretty affordable.
Mhm.
There were some on different topics. There were some that were just nonfiction. There were some that were fiction. There were some, like, I just did one that was writing about difficult subjects.
Oh, cool.
That was really great. And they're like 2-hour long, like mini classes.
Ooh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
I was going to say something else about community. What was I going to say? There's another. Oh, if you also want to learn about where people are submitting, another way you could is online readings. There are a bunch of them happening all the time. There's one happening on Valentine's Day, hosted by. Who is it hosted by? It's not. I know Barrel House has one coming up.
Yeah.
but I do not think that's the one on Valentine's Day. I know it's hosted by writer and author Meg Pokeruss.
Oh,
Running
is that
it.
the best microfiction crew, or is it something? I don't know. There have been so many online
bad.
readings. Like I can't keep up with all of them.
There are a lot of online readings happening.
It's wonderful, but
they happen around events. They happen weekly. A lot of people are hosting them monthly, and it's just, I mean, if anything good came out of COVID, it was that the literary community opened up, so you do not have to be in the state and be in person. Like a bunch of readings that happen in New York are now virtual, so a bunch of writers that aren't in New York can go to them. So it's really just opened up opportunities for writers to hear each other read, to go to each other's workshops and things like that.
It's true.
We have about 5 or 8 minutes left. If there's a last question, go ahead and ask, or if you all have any like parting words of wisdom or anything, that would be wonderful.
Oh, parting words of wisdom. I don't even know. I don't know. I think my main parting word of wisdom would be just if you're really enjoying writing, keep it up, even if it's just for you. You know, I know we've talked a lot about submitting, but that's not always the end game of writing for everyone. And that's, you know, just if you enjoy it, keep at it and keep learning ways to get around your stuck days, because there's always a way to eventually get around it, says the one who hasn't written in weeks. But yeah, just keep writing and all that.
Yeah, I would say definitely keep pushing forward. Realize that the New Yorker is not the end game. There are different end games for different writers, and that you just need to find your own, but you don't even need to find your own end game. I don't have one. I want to keep doing this for the rest of my life. And so I love what I do, and I love writing. And so that's what I want to do with the rest of my life. And so you just need to keep moving forward. There are going to be people that doubt your abilities. There's going to be a lot of rejection. And that's also going to make you feel stuck at times, but you just got to keep pushing through it. And then one day you'll get that first acceptance, and then that'll lead to another acceptance. And then that will lead to Carolyn's collection.
She brought it back.
Which has a whole collection of rejections, which is fine because I'm not happy with where it is right now anyway. So if it had been picked up when I had originally sent it out, I think I'd be very disappointed in it now. So there's a silver lining.
There you go.
Yep, I'm still waiting for it. I'm ready. I'm also ready for Annie's novels. I mean, I have a lot of projects I'm waiting for.
You have a lot of friends who make you wait.
I know, you guys. Like, I give you stuff.
It's true.
Okay. Kim or Ross, do you have a last question or anything else you'd like to add? Or
I feel like everything was covered. It was really interesting, and you guys are really inspiring, and really appreciate your time, and it's been fun.
I just want to say I really appreciate talking to you guys and taking the time to discuss things with us students, and it's been a wonder and awesome experience. So thank you so much. And I think you answered all the questions very well, and I appreciate all the feedback on everything.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
thank you all for coming. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then you all are free to go. Thank you, Annie and KB, for agreeing to Zoom in with us, and hope those of us who are iced in stay warm. Yeah, Ross, go
I
ahead.
was just wondering if I could talk to you just for like a quick second after.
Sure, I'll stick around. So I'll turn off the recording and stick around, and after everyone leaves, yeah, absolutely. And yes, stay warm. Don't go out in the ice if you don't have to. I just had to hammer into my trash can, so hopefully you all don't have to do that to take out the trash. So yeah, have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.